Hello, I'm Jonasz Rewiński and this is Military Mind. Armed conflicts, defense and security, land, sea and air. We've got you covered. Russian forces continued their daily strikes on Ukrainian territory. Overnight, the country was attacked with nearly 150 strike drones, with hits recorded at 12 locations. In the Odessa region, Russian forces attacked with drones, damaging a critical infrastructure facility and part of its equipment. The fire caused by the strike was later extinguished. No casualties were reported. Meanwhile, in Russia, one person was killed in Krasnodar as a result of a Ukrainian drone attack. Drones struck 3 multi-story residential buildings in the city and sparked a fire in one of the apartments. Drone debris also damaged the roof of a medical center and a power line. One of the damaged buildings is located about 1 kilometer from the Krasnodar Central Military Airfield. Turning to the front line now, in the Konstantinivka area, Russian forces have established a stable presence in the southern part of the city. According to analysts, the logistics situation for Ukrainian defense in Konstantinivka is deteriorating, although Russian troops still face strong resistance from Ukrainian UAV units. Ukrainian forces are also continuing to build up positions west of Chasiv Yar. Now, in the Middle East, Iran reported that a projectile struck the territory of the Bushehr nuclear power plant, located near the city of the same name. No damage or casualties were reported. Officials stated that such actions violate international norms and could have serious consequences for the entire region. The plant is operated with the involvement of Russia's Rosatom, whose representatives condemned the strike as a gross violation of international nuclear safety principles. Bushehr is the first nuclear power plant in Iran, originally built in 1975 and later completed with Russian participation. Iranian authorities also confirmed that Ali Larijani, secretary of Iran's Supreme National Security Council, was killed in an Israeli strike, along with his son Morteza Larijani and security official Ali Reza Bayat. In Israel, the 67-year-old Larijani was considered one of the key architects of Iran's nuclear program. Meanwhile, at least 6 people were killed in Israeli airstrikes on Beirut overnight, while 2 people were killed in Iranian strikes on Tel Aviv. Iranian media reported that Tehran launched a wave of missiles targeting Israeli forces operating near the Lebanese border in fighting against the Iran-backed group Hezbollah. The US military also stated that it used deep penetrator bombs to strike Iranian missile sites along the Strait of Hormuz. US armed forces continue operations to identify and strike Iranian targets that, according to US military assessments, pose an immediate threat to US military personnel. The command emphasizes that the operations are being conducted selectively, with a focus on military targets related to missile programs and unmanned systems. At the same time, tensions in the region remain high, and the parties continue to demonstrate their readiness for further escalation. Of course, the US military has unparalleled precision on its side, but there still remains a question of production sites. For example, those manufacturing the Shahed drones, which are often hidden deep beneath the ground. Hence, the penetrator bombs that we mentioned earlier. These might actually come in handy once the US military begins a thorough campaign to eradicate these sites, which, by the way, is not going to be easy. Now, moving back to Ukraine, and against the backdrop of the setting sun, a pair of Ukrainian Air Force F-16s take to the skies to carry out a combat mission. These sorties have become part of the Air Force's daily combat operations: airspace protection, interception of aerial targets, and support for ground units. Every takeoff is a response to the constant threat from the air by the Russians. The F-16 still continues to impress, even after all those years. It was designed to basically execute aerial maneuvers that would have been unthinkable before that. Ukraine obviously has a limited number of these. Some countries like Belgium promised to deliver more, but so far these deliveries, unfortunately, are somewhat stalled. They're not really going anywhere, and Ukraine needs those fighter jets urgently. Now, we're moving on and staying in Ukraine, taking a look at Konstantinivka in the Donetsk region. This is located just 20 kilometers away from Kramatorsk. Now, today this city looks very different than it used to. Where residential neighborhoods once stood, there are now ruins and burned out high-rises. Published video footage shows areas that were intact just a few months ago. Now the buildings are destroyed or charred. The streets are empty and traces of fighting remain at every turn. Shell craters, debris from military equipment and the remains of civilian property. Konstantinivka has become an example of how Russian war is transforming urban infrastructure and people's lives. Once ordinary neighborhoods have now turned into a landscape of destruction that reveals the true cost of the war. These are really haunting images, and behind them lies human tragedy for all those people who lived then. We're showing this because after the war in Iran started, people started to forget about what's going on in Ukraine. And of course, there is always the question of impact of the US and Israeli strikes in Iran on civilians. However, in Ukraine, that impact has been much more profound. Think more Gaza than Iran, because civilian buildings, civilian infrastructure was being affected by these Russian strikes on a daily basis. Not only that, but also in contrast, the war in Gaza, civilians were the primary targets for the Russians because they were not doing that well on the front line. So they chose a terrorist campaign against Ukrainian civilians. So something to basically think about. Especially since the spotlight is now on Iran, the war in Ukraine still going on, still claiming lives on a daily basis, unfortunately. And with this, we conclude this edition of Military Mind. Please stay with us here on TVP World for more latest news, updates and commentary.